tell you a love story. It's the story of all of us. It's a love story of freedom. It's the story of our founding fathers who fought and bled for freedom and then crafted the most miraculous document, our Constitution. The framers understood that our rights come not from monarchs, but from God. And that those rights are secure only when government power is restrained.
I left Cuba in late 1957, came to the University of Texas on a student visa, and when Castro took over in 1959, I went back to Cuba that summer, and I was shocked. That same man that had been talking about hope and change began confiscating private property, began attacking freedom of the press, shutting down newspapers, television stations, radio stations, began attacking freedom of religion.
My tia Sonia fought against Castro in Cuba. She fought in the counter-revolution and she was thrown in prison.
I was involved since 17 years old fighting against Castro. I had my rifle and I was ready to do whatever was necessary to survive.
So I left Cuba totally disillusioned, never to return again, but so grateful to God to be in the greatest country on the face of the earth.
I recall when I escaped Cuba to come to the United States, I put my feet in the ground. I felt that it was the most wonderful thing I could experience, being free.
I remember when we were young, Ted and I would literally sit at the feet of my grandparents and my mother and my uncle, and we would hear the adventures of their life growing up. They had all these wonderful freedoms to only one day have someone come to the country and change the destiny of our family and the legacy of our family. And Ted and I would listen to these stories, and I remember we'd go to the back room after we'd play, and I would say, well, I'm gonna be strong just like them, and Ted would say, I'm gonna be a freedom fighter. After so many years, to realize that he's picked up the torch of my family's legacy and carried it on here to fight for the freedoms that we have here in the United States. It's incredible.
God's blessing has been on America from the very beginning of this nation. And I believe God isn't done with America yet.
At the beginning of 1975, I was really a drunk. That really caused a lot of problems in our marriage. I was actually separated from my wife.
At the time that Rafael was drinking, I was drinking too. We were not in a good place at that time. So it was a blessing when he became a Christian and stopped the drinking.
It's the greatest decision of my life. It totally turned my life around.
I hit bottom emotionally and was able to accept the Lord myself, and that changed my life radically. That stopped my drinking. It was a complete change in my personality and my life, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
Ted actually gave his heart to Christ when he was 8 years old. That has become a foundation in his life.
I'll tell you, my mother is an incredible prayer warrior. This has been a remarkable journey, but one of the things that gives me real strength is not a day goes by that my mom is not lifting me up in prayer.
That's right.
The Bible says that our steps are ordered of the Lord. It was so wonderful that as Ted was entering high school, the Free Enterprise Institute decided to create a group of 5 kids, called them the Constitutional Corroborators. And they had each of these 5 kids memorize the entire U.S. Constitution. During the next 4 years, they did approximately 80 speeches on free market economics and the Constitution. So before Ted left high school, he was passionate about the Constitution. He was passionate about free markets, about the rule of law. That's why he said, I have to go to one of the Ivies. Now you gotta realize we're broke. We just lost our business. And he says, I gotta go to one of the Ivies. And I remember his mother and I, we said, we don't have any money, but we'll make it happen.
When Ted started Princeton, he had to provide for loans and scholarships for himself because we did not have any resources to provide for him. So he took 2 jobs in order to help pay for his daily expenses there. We could give him love and kisses, but that's about it.
I'm thankful to God for that experience because that experience taught Ted about the importance of hard work and about the fact that no matter how hard the struggle, with hard work and perseverance, we can overcome.
There is no one in my generation who has done more to champion constitutional conservative causes than Ted Cruz. I don't know of any place that's harder to stand up and fight and win than the United States Supreme Court. Whether it's defending Second Amendment rights, or protecting United States sovereignty against the United Nations, or fighting for religious freedom and people of faith.
Ted not only clerked at the United States Supreme Court, but even at his young age, he's argued more cases at the Supreme Court than any attorney in the state of Texas.
Time and time again, Ted Cruz stood up in the Supreme Court of the United States. He led, he fought, and he won.
Ted took cases that he really believed in. He obviously believed in the veterans, and the idea of disgracing a veterans memorial and tearing it down because it had a cross on it was inconceivable, not only to Ted, but to most veterans and most Americans. And they actually ordered it covered in a bag while it was on appeal, with a chain around the bottom with a padlock. And you looked at the picture and you thought, what country is this in? Ted knew if you tear this memorial down, veterans memorials all over the country are going to have to come down, including in Arlington Memorial Cemetery, because there's lots of crosses and stars of David and religious symbols connected to our veterans memorials. Thanks to that case and to our victory at the Supreme Court, those memorials are still up. And I can tell you every veterans organization and every veteran I've ever talked to is very grateful for what Ted did. When the Ten Commandments case came to Texas, in case after case, in district after district, everyone lost those cases until Ted Cruz took the Texas Ten Commandments case and won. The Supreme Court issued a decision saying that the Texas Ten Commandments did not need to be torn down, that they would remain to stand. That precedent is now used all over the country. Anybody who cares about gun rights knows about the Heller case. Ted Cruz was one of the handful of people who got an award from the NRA for contributing in a way that made a real difference in that case. To have someone who is well-spoken and also believes to their core in our principles and the principles upon which this country was founded in the Constitution, there's a rare combination. He's not only committed to these principles, but he's actually very good at expressing them, defending them, and advocating for them. And that's why people who are on the opposite side can't help but tip a hat to him and say that he's very dangerous because he actually might be able to preserve these principles and even restore some that have been lost.
I think he is the most talented and fearless Republican politician I've seen in the last 30 years. And this guy has no fear. He just keeps plowing ahead, and he is going to be something to watch. And a lot of Republicans feel this way. If we only got someone who was articulate and was for what we were for, we'd win elections.
So you taught Ted Cruz at Harvard. One of the sharpest students I had. He's deeply principled. He was not a compromiser. He was not somebody who tried to make friends by accepting what was then the political correctness of the day.
This country needs more truth and trust. Ted Cruz says what he's going to do, and he does it.
I think one of the tests of whether somebody's a leader is to look at their life and see if they've ever stood alone, or with a small group, or against the odds. That takes a rare character, somebody with a lot of courage who's shown that through their life.
Our nation, the laws of the land, are more conservative than they were before because of Ted Cruz.
My first impression of Ted was that I thought he looked like a 1950s movie star. He was confident, he was funny.
Heidi stole my heart almost immediately. She's beautiful and she's brilliant, but she's my best friend.
We both have a very, very deep and real admiration for each other. Faith plays an incredibly important role in my life with Ted and our 2 girls. I come from a missionary family. My grandfather was in Africa for 34 years and helped build a village and was a surgeon there. My father continued that tradition. As a father to the girls, Ted is really their friend and their buddy. They are so excited when Daddy comes home. Ted loves to play games. He loves to get down on the floor and put a puzzle together. He's able to put work behind him to just really have a good time with them. He loves to read to them. He's very animated. And our littlest one always wants someone to fall asleep on the floor next to their bed, and I often find Ted with his head propped up against the dresser, fast asleep.
Ted is a compassionate person. He truly believes in helping people get a step up in the world, giving them every opportunity in order for them to achieve the American dream.
America has been a beacon for the world. It's been a beacon of hope. It's been a beacon of freedom. And to be the child of immigrants with nothing makes you understand every single day how extraordinary what we have here in America is, and makes you committed to fight for our freedom. I remember when we were kids, my dad used to say to me, used to say to Bibi all the time, when he faced oppression in Cuba, they had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here,
We don't have anywhere to go.
It's the story of each and every one of you. We are all the sons and daughters of those who risked everything for freedom. And each of us has a duty to pass that same liberty on to the next generation.